Mine. So we're just. Oh.
Recording in progress.
Commissioner Weiss, who's on vacation this week.
Joe Kirby, County Administrator.
Dan Ogerow, Commissioner.
Vance Cronin, County Council.
Jeff Van Arsdale, Benton County Sheriff.
Rick Krieger, Chief Financial Officer.
Johan Hide, Pronouns, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator.
Hi, April Holland, she, her pronouns, and I'm with the Health Department.
Okay, did we get Commissioner Ogerow on the record?
Indeed, Commissioner Ogerow. Good morning.
Good morning. Then we'll go through the room here. Why don't you start off, Erica?
Erica Milo, Board Recorder.
Corey Grogan, I'm the new Public Information Officer.
Welcome.
Thank you. Gary Schmack, Public Works.
Hardly recognize you, Gary. Okay, thank you. Are there any announcements? Hearing none, are there any comments from the public? Well, we're moving right along. Review and approve the agenda. Are there any changes?
Chair, there are no changes.
Great, then we'll get right into our work session, and I saw April Holland. I assume you are ready to go, April.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you, Commissioners Joe and all. Got a COVID-19 update for you this morning. And, you know, I wish I had better news. We're in another time of change in the pandemic. And it's my job to bring you the news about the change. So, as you know, we started with the Omicron variant in the winter, and subvariants of Omicron are now coming to the fore and have been coming to the fore. And new ones, particularly BA4 and BA5, are proving more evasive to existing immunity, and BA5 likely may be more severe than previous Omicron variants. So we're seeing a new surge of cases and some increased hospitalizations as a result. Due to the holiday yesterday, we don't have a full week of data for last week yet. The week starting 6/26, we're lacking 2 days there, but the reported cases have been high. For the last week of cases reported, the week started June 19th. We had 339 cases reported among Benton County residents. This corresponds to 358 cases per 100,000. The week before that, it was 308 per 100, 308 cases, or 325 per 100,000. So, you know, not an enormous jump, but enough to kind of cause us to dig in a little to see what's going on, as we were hoping that we'd see either a continued sustained sort of plateau, or perhaps a decline. And our positivity rate, which tells us the number of positive tests over all the tests that we've conducted here in Benton County, saw a rise the week of June 19th to 17.7%. So that's up from 13.4%. And of course, our reported cases reflect a huge undercount of actual infections. And we know that estimates earlier in the pandemic, before we had good access to rapid tests, we could estimate that about 25% of cases, or 1 in 4, were reported. And then in the first Omicron wave, BA1, it was estimated that for every reported case, there was about 14 unreported. And now we're up to 20 or 30 times more infections than what are reported. We're still looking at wastewater surveillance. It's a little bit lagged, but it continues to reflect that viral signals remain high in our communities. We'll continue to monitor the reported cases, hospital trends, wastewater surveillance, and other sources to better understand the ongoing transmission trends. I touched on this when I first opened, but as we have experienced several times, new and dominant variants are again coming to the forefront. Before Omicron came along last winter, we saw a landscape of variants all competing with one another. The first Omicron wave, BA1, brought a huge wave of infections and very quickly replaced the Delta variant. And since that first Omicron, new variants have quickly dominated, outcompeting the previous ones. We've seen BA1, BA2, then most recently BA2.12.1, and now we've got BA4 and BA5 on the scene. And it looks like BA5 has already taken the lead, at least for now. In my last update, I'm going to just switch gears for a second to talk about the CDC community levels, because there have been some pretty big changes to what Oregon has seen. My last update, Oregon had 3 counties that moved to the red category in the CDC community levels. Now, only 12 of our 36 counties are not in the red. So we have 24 in the high or red CDC community level category. This means that case counts and hospitalizations have risen to the level that CDC recommends universal indoor masking. To my knowledge, none of the 24 red counties have issued masking requirements, but I have seen a lot of recommendations that people don masks indoors at this time. So for Benton County, one of the following 2, and you've heard this from me before, but I want to update where we are. One of the following 2 would need to be met to put Benton County into the high risk category. Because we already meet the case threshold, which is 200 cases per 100,000. We're well above that. One of the 2 is new COVID-19 admissions per 100,000. We're currently at 7.6 per 100,000, and that's up from 5.8 per 100,000 the last time I provided an update to this body. And a number of 10 per 100,000 would put us into the red, as it were. The other metric is the percentage of staffed beds in use by COVID patients, and that is up to 6.8%. Up from about 5%. And again, that would at 10% would put us at high. So we are creeping upward into that red category. We may or may not reach it. It all depends on what happens with transmission and what actions we take to reduce that transmission. Now to hospitalizations. Hospitalizations have risen to a higher point than what was previously forecast. Now my data is from Friday, but in the past 2 weeks from Friday, statewide hospitalizations rose from 303 to 418. That's a rise of almost 40%. So just for comparison, my last update, the numbers ranged from 309 to 327. So we went from 303 to 418 this time. In region 2, as you know, which includes Benton, Lynn, Lincoln, Polk, Marion, and Yamhill counties, hospitalizations went from 40 up to 76 individuals hospitalized with COVID. It's not good. When I opened last week's hospitalization report, the numbers had doubled. I had to look at the dates to ensure that it was reflecting a single week of data and not 2 weeks of data. What it comes down to is that there's a lot of COVID, and transmission is largely and collectively in our power, in our control. The more we avoid infection as individuals, the more we reduce the burden in our communities. And that not only helps us as individuals from dealing with COVID, it helps everyone, especially those at higher risk of severe disease. So please get vaccinated, get boosted, and please apply additional protections such as indoor masking to reduce your risk further and reduce risk to your community. We have done this before, and we know that it works. The fewer cases there are, the more transmission goes down. Infectious diseases don't just happen to individuals, they happen to populations and to communities. So to reduce risk of infection and onward transmission to others, please stay up to date with vaccinations. We know that 3 doses are key for most, and get a 4th if you qualify. Vaccination and boosting, it works. A recent study by The Lancet found that vaccines cut potential global health death toll by more than half in the first year that vaccines were available. And people who are up to date with vaccinations are far, far less likely to experience severe outcomes of COVID-19 disease. Again, let's welcome the summer weather. Choose outdoor activities, well-ventilated spaces. Get outside, put sunscreen on though. And use rapid antigen testing before gatherings, meetings, when traveling, or when feeling unwell. Wearing a mask in indoor settings and all public indoor settings is a very good idea right now. And we know that disease prevention isn't all or nothing. Reducing your risk when it's higher absolutely makes a difference. Those are my main messages. You know, we have a lot going on with vaccination. are the youngest population. Our vaccines are rolling out for 6 months through 4 and 5-year-olds. And we've seen a lot of people getting in with their pediatrician in various clinics. We have clinics coming up later this month that are geared toward children, and you can check our website for that. And if there are any questions, people are more than welcome to contact the COVID-19 hotline. We continue to staff that and have folks ready to answer your questions. And with that, I'll just stop and see if you have any questions for me today. Thank you.
Any questions for April?
Just a comment. I wanted to attest to the fact that if it's BA5 that I've had, it is no fun. And it's knocked me out for the better part of 2 weeks at this point. Yes, this is something that everyone probably will eventually have, but if you can help it, avoid it. I can just imagine landing on someone that's less healthy. This would be devastating, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. So please take care of yourselves. And thank you, April, for continuing to try to urge caution.
All right. Well, I guess my question, April, is I was hoping for cheerier news here for the summer, but what do we have? What's your prediction for this fall when the nice summer weather fades and we're indoors more? What's going on in the vaccine world that may show up this fall?
Thanks, Commissioner. There's a lot going on in the vaccine world. And, in terms of what we can look forward to, this is a ongoing, novel situation. It's interesting that we continue to see new subvariants come up and become dominant so quickly, and that they are just really changing quickly. However, the vaccine picture is changing for the fall and perhaps into the winter. There are a couple different vaccine trials and conversations happening right now. We know that there is an Omicron-specific vaccine, a bivalent vaccine, which includes both the original COVID-19 strain as well as an Omicron strain, a BA1 Omicron strain. And that may be available in the next couple of months here. The timelines depend on so many things, of course. And there's also been talk about a BA4-5, so this current variant specific vaccine or some combination of vaccine that isn't likely to be ready to go until later in the fall. So there's been a lot of discussion around whether it would be beneficial to just come out with the Omicron bivalent vaccine or to wait for the BA4-5 combo vaccine. We'll continue to follow the news and bring it to you, but it will definitely, we have high hopes that it will make a big change to population health when we have Omicron included into those vaccines.
Suzanne?
I have one follow-up question. April, are we, with this wave of Omicron variants hitting us, seeing more disease in long-term care facilities and other kinds of congregate settings?
Thanks. That's a good question. Long-term care facilities and long-term care settings, congregate settings, have been a great focus of the work of the communicable disease team throughout. We certainly have a number of high-risk setting outbreaks currently, and they grow and are resolved pretty constantly. There are a couple that I have my daily attention, and I wouldn't say that we're seeing an increase in the number of facilities or the severity of disease in the residents, of which I'm aware at this moment. But there's a team of individuals who are solely dedicated to providing infection prevention and guidance to long-term care facilities and other settings.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I've got a comment on what you said earlier about to some degree we have control over this between vaccines and being careful and the rapid testing. And I think that now that we have a shiny new PIO, that message needs to be emphasized. We're not at the mercy of this thing. There are active things that we can and should be doing that need emphasis even this summer. So I appreciate that comment, April.
Thanks, Commissioner. And sorry, I just want to add that we'd be thrilled to connect Corey, I believe, with our communications team. That'd be amazing.
I think we can do that. Okay. Anything else for April? I would like to comment. In 2 weeks when you're back, I would like better news. So I'll just maybe make a note of that. All right. Next up is our consent calendar. Is there anything we need to remove from that? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I will move approval of the consent calendar.
Well, I will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. And I see Vance has popped in. Can we do the public hearing at this point, Vance, or do we have to wait till 10 o'clock?
If it says on the agenda, and I'm trying to look at the agenda, if it says 10 o'clock, then that's when we need to wait till 10.
Okay. And we will move on to old business. Discussion and decision regarding the request for the exemption to extend the risk management contract. And I saw Rick Traeger earlier. Give him a minute to pop back on. There he is.
Good morning, Commissioners. Hope you had a good 4th of July weekend. Great to see both of you. I am here today to request a specific exemption in accordance to Section 2.54 of the Benton County Code. And this is specifically exemption from contract bidding that is required as part of our contract code. So as some background, the county, my department, is currently in need of a property tort liability and auto liability and physical damage insurance placement provider. I think, as most of you know, you met a few weeks ago, Hub International has been our contractor. Prior to that, it was Barker Earlings, as you recall, and then there was a subsequent buyout of that took place last year. That contract was executed in June 20th of 2017 and expired on June 20th of 2022. This is specifically contract number 501067. in terms of its expiration, I can only take fault myself. I did not renew that process. I think with the changes with Hub International and Barker Earlings and the combination of me just obviously being a little newer to all of this, failed to renew that in a timely manner. In conversations with Hub International, they have indicated a willingness to continue to provide services at the same rate that we got back in 2017. So I think that's a critical point I want to make clear, because one option is I certainly could rebid this contract. It's going to take some time, obviously, to rebid it. And most likely in a rebid situation, I'm not going to achieve that same kind of rate. Again, you don't know until you go out, but this was 5 years ago in which this fixed payment was allowed, and they are willing to continue to do that. I can also say that when you accumulate the period of time and the contract amounts, I can assure you that the total contract would be less than 150. And that's, I think, an important note, because that is sort of the threshold that requires the formal RFP. Albeit we do still need to, typically do what it would be an intermediate process at this point. So what I am requesting at this point is a exception in accordance to the rule that would allow me to extend that contract for 2-year period. And again, that would keep us under the 150,000. And at the end of that 2-year period, we would resolicit for services. And next time, I promise I won't miss it. So I think that's about it. Vance and I have been sort of talking back and forth a little bit. This has been my first order that I put in. He gave me good guidance in relation to that. So him and I haven't had a chance to talk specifically, but hopeful that I hit all the right things within the order that is part of your agenda. I know that got sent out late on or Saturday morning. Maury was able to get that out. So but with that, I'm happy to take any questions, or if there's anything Vance needs to add in relation to the process.
I would just add, Rick did a great job explaining it. One thing to note about our insurance brokerage services, it seems to me maybe 10, 12 years ago, we attempted to go out on an RFP, but no other brokerage outfit provided insurance services for governments. It was all CIS. I think that was the resultant of this current contract. And candidly, even if Rick was aware of this, the need to go out for the contract for the RFP for this year, I think it's highly doubtful we would have received any other bidders other than CIS at this time. So using this exemption process, with my understanding of the insurance market, is not cutting out any potential bidders. It's extremely likely we would be in the same situation, offering a contract to CIS, even if we had gone through the RFP process. But in 2 years, we'll know for sure.
Any questions for Vance or Rick?
I just wanted to thank Vance for that additional comment about the last experience putting out a request for proposals. As you all know, I've been urging us to take a more historical perspective on some of our decision making, so that we know what the context was the previous time we went out for bid, for instance. So that is that's reassuring. And I am comfortable with this exemption process this time around, and look forward to 2 years from now and seeing what the market does bring us.
Yeah, I appreciate the background information, and I don't have any further questions. So if we're ready, are we ready for a motion?
I will go ahead and provide that. I move to adopt order D 2022-058 to approve, in accordance with section 2.540 of the Benton County Code, an exemption from the required county bidding requirements for contract 501067 to allow for a 2-year contract extension with the understanding that the services will be rebid at the end of this term.
And I will, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Question for you, Rick. You've mentioned that maybe you missed something here. Refresh my memory. How long have you been working for Benton County?
Well, I just passed the 9-month threshold, so I can't make excuses anymore, Commissioner. And not that I was ever about excuses, but certainly, yes, I've reached my 9-month anniversary, I guess.
Well, congratulations, and I'm glad you're part of our team. And it's been an eventful 9 months, and great to have you. So with
you,
that,
Commissioner.
we'll move on to new business 7.1. Letter of support for the City of Corvallis proposal to the Oregon Department of Energy. And I see we have Sean McGuire. Come on down.
Here we go. Thank you, Commissioner. Joe, thank you for your time. Yes, we were reached out by the City of Corvallis for a letter of support for a grant. Oddly enough, I think that I've met both Commissioner Rogero and Malone just in the hallway. This is a new grant, $12 million. They have 2 planned stages, and then hopefully it'll be rolling. And so in the letter of support, you will see there's the Department of Energy, Oregon Department of Energy's Community Renewable Energy Grant Program. This Corvallis is applying for a design grant for the H.D. Taylor Water Treatment Plant to do solar and energy storage. The intent is to really look at resiliency in case of a major disaster, not only on reducing our carbon footprint, but also on storage, which is something that really needs to be implemented throughout in case, again, of an emergency or economic shock or anything. So they reach out to us, as you see in the letter of support. They're going for the design phase of it, and to see how much and what the schematics and all they have partners, and just moving forward with that proposal. I would like to say, I think I've also mentioned with both of you that we also plan to apply for this grant in the next phase. We're working with Public Works, I see Gary behind me, both in fleet and our facilities to see opportunities, if that's for solar, if that's for charging, electric vehicle charging stations. It's a really great grant program that's new, and we hope to take full advantage of it. And the last thing, just as a gratuitous plug, I did, during talking to the program, come to find out the program manager of this energy grant program was my first climate intern, James Kogel, which is just amazing. I just can't thank you commissioners enough, Joe, to support this. I'm in contact with most of them at my interns in the past, and this is what they do. They're just amazing. So anyway, does anybody have, unless you have questions?
Sean, what's the timetable on this?
I believe it's 6 to 9 months for the design. And then there's 4 categories. One is $500,000 for design, and then there's 3 other $1 million categories. You get more points, or there's more emphasis on resiliency. So again, this is the design phase, and then upon that completion, Corvallis plans to go for the construction grant.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Rogero, any questions?
No questions. I'm excited to hear about this proposal and look forward to supporting it.
Excellent. Yeah, Scott Dibvet, our counterpart with Corvallis and Economic Development Office meet regularly, and we were very excited this opportunity. So that's what we're all going after. So thank you.
And when would Benton County be able to apply?
Since it's new, the first deadline is July 10th. We just felt it was way too fast for us to get, since we don't have something specific in mind. The next phase, in talking to James, is somewhere in September, October, like late summer, early fall. We think that's a good enough time to have something ready. And then after that, they're trying to do more rolling than like deadline things. If you have a project, you apply and they go through the 12 million as they can. So that's what they've relayed to us. They've got a little delayed, as with any new program. It's just what happens.
And the $12 million is the total.
That's what they share with me. Yes, that's the total of the entire grant program.
For the state.
Yes, for this and all the jurisdictions applying for that. Yeah.
Great. I can see that being competitive.
Yeah, and that's why we want to get early.
Okay. Any other questions for Sean? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I will move approval of the letter of support for the Corvallis grant application for ODOE energy resilience.
And I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Excellent.
Looking forward to more information on that.
We are
Sean.
too. We're really looking forward to working with Scott and Corvallis to see how they move forward on this really innovative project. So thank you both. Thank you, Joe.
All right. Next up, 8.1, discussion and decision to adopt resolution 2022-011 promoting apprenticeship training programs. And Gary.
Good morning, Commissioners. Gary Stockoff, Public Works. This is an item that Commissioner Ojero brought to my attention, advances attention probably 2 months ago regarding support for apprenticeship programs statewide. There was a couple options. One that had some very prescriptive requirements where we could be a training agent and kind of be out in the front of trying to support and encourage the use of apprentice programs. And looking at it, and then an aspirational resolution, which you see before you today. In looking at that and talking to Vance, I also met with our county engineer and our road manager and a couple others. And it was really felt that due to the number of contracts that we do and the size of those contracts, that going the prescriptive route probably wasn't going to be a good fit for Benton County, especially with our staffing concerns and having the level of monitoring and administration that would be required for the prescriptive version. So we did prepare an aspirational resolution, which is you see before you today, to support the use of apprentice and the programs that go with them. Again, we don't do a lot of contracting, and so we will work with our local contractors, and we suspect that many of them, especially the larger ones, will somehow become training agents and adopt this. But we also use a lot of smaller, I call them mom and pop contractors, and this would be well beyond their scope. So I think to make sure that we don't limit our availability of contractors, the aspirational version was what we decided to go with. If there's any questions on that, I could try to answer those. And again, Vance was great in helping put that together. And so we can try to address any questions you might have.
Any questions?
I have no questions. I just want to thank staff for bringing this forward. As you mentioned, Gary, I was contacted by a colleague in Clackamas County who was encouraging us to adopt language on apprenticeships. As we all know, staffing is a huge issue right now. Training is a big need, and apprenticeship programs are a valuable approach to increasing the capacity of our workforce and doing so while paying a wage. So I am happy to see this resolution, even though it's primarily aspirational. And I look forward to us sharing information with our contractors from the State Department of Bureau of Labor and Industries about the apprenticeship program, both union and non-union apprenticeship programs and community college programs that are available to companies so that they can expand their workforce through training. So thank you.
Yeah, I guess my comment would be this is part of rescuing, revitalizing CTE type programs, whether it's at the high school level or LBCC, that there's a real need for the training and the workers with skills to do things. So I think this fits right in, and if there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we adopt the resolution R 2022 -011 that promotes and encourages apprenticeship programs in Benton County.
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. I guess my only other comment would be I'd like to hear back on how this is working out, if this has any effect, if we need to up our game a little bit to get beyond just the aspirational. But I think there's no question that Benton County supports apprenticeship programs and CTE type programs in our local schools. So
No, I appreciate that, Commissioner. And I think that once this kind of, because I think it's still kind of being formulated at a statewide basis. So I'm hoping, a year from now, we'll have some data that will, support or show what's actually happening or what's not happening. So it is going to take a while because I think the state's still putting it together as well. So.
Yep. Great, thank you. All right. Next up, 8.2, discussion and decision to approve order number D 2022-051, adopting unanticipated projects of regional significance. That's you.
Commissioner, we're going to have Mr. Dillingham come forward and go through this item for you, and we'll be here to answer questions.
Great.
Good morning, commissioners.
Morning.
My name is Brad Dillingham. I'm the transportation coordinator for Benton County. The unanticipated projects of regional significance, or as we call the UPRS or UPPERS project, was the last project on the STIF plan. And basically, the UPPERS project is intended to fund projects and opportunities for public transportation service providers as they arise over the current STIF cycle. These projects are typically one-time purchases or small capital projects or projects that come up when there's just a really good opportunity within the STIF cycle. This time around, there were 3 projects being proposed. The first of which was proposed by City of Corvallis and City of Philomath. City of Corvallis requests an additional $60,000 for this STIF formula cycle. These funds would be for the transit support position, which supports a transit program assistant that is utilized by City of Corvallis, Philomath, and Benton County. The original request amount of $122,700 for the fiscal year 22-23 biennium is not enough to cover the position. For reference, last biennium, $202,000 were requested. So that would be an ongoing project. The second project would be from Benton Area Transit, the county's transit system, for GPS units for a total of $7,000 through the Seamless Transit project delivered by the Oregon Cascades West Council of Governments that was included in the last STIF plan. That had access to GPS units on all of its fixed route bus services. The GPS units have proven to be really helpful for staff and for customer service, as they allow BAT staff to see where vehicles are located, and it allows BAT staff to communicate with passengers regarding the location of where their bus is. This project will purchase and install GPS units for the remainder of the BAT fleet. And it will also pay for the software licensing associated with units for 1 year and 3 months. The third project is for Oregon Cascades West Council of Governments. They applied for a discretionary grant to do mobility hubs, both at Lynn Benton Community College and Oregon State University. However, they did not qualify. They were approved for the discretionary grant, but they did not qualify for the 10% match rate. Instead, they qualified for the 20% match rate. So they're requesting for the additional 10% requirement so that they can match the discretionary grant to their mobility hub design. So those are the 3 projects. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Commissioner Ojero?
A couple of little questions. So the GPS units, as I understand it, that we have them on our fixed route system, and so we're looking to expand to the demand system as well, so that we have a better sense for location. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And the second question is, can you tell me a little bit more about the mobility hubs envisioned at LBCC and OSU?
Yeah. So basically, the idea is it's going to take a couple of cycles, stiff cycles, so a couple bienniums. The idea is that a lot of services, both in Lynn County and in Benton County, stop by Oregon State University. And so the one at OSU is actually going to be in front of the McNary Hall building. So on Jefferson and 15th, 14th. And so this biennium, they're laying out the design work. And so they're hiring a consultant to come in and help us design a mobility hub, much like the downtown transit center, maybe a little smaller, to help facilitate the many services that use that location. And then depending on what they come up with in the next biennium, I believe the COG is going to apply for the actual funding to construct it.
And is Oregon State University also involved in funding this venture?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know currently right now, at this point, I don't think so. At this point, it is Benton County, Lynn County stiff funds, plus the state discretionary money. But it is on their property. They are giving out.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Is, they are involved, as will be LBCC, and I think I've seen the proposal and maybe a place for bike share bikes, and that the term is accurate. It's not just a transit center, but there are, I think it's still in the design phase, but other amenities are planned for that location, and makes the transit center more user-friendly and hopefully better utilized. So any further questions?
I just wanted to thank you. I know that the Oregon Cascades West Council of Governments has also been doing some virtual hub sorts of work, the seamless transportation work. So thank you for clarifying that this is actually a physical hub project. I was not as up to speed on the evolution of these projects. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Next time, bring us drawings. I've seen drawings. and would give a better idea what the scope of the project is.
Absolutely.
All right, if there's no further questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I move to approve order number 2022-051, adopting the unanticipated projects of regional significance for the statewide transportation improvement fund of Benton County.
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you,
And,
Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Next up, item 8.3, discussion and decision to adopt the statewide transportation improvement plan, STIF, advisory committee bylaws. So that's Gary Stockoff and Alicia Scherf.
So Commissioner, I believe you have a 10 o'clock public hearing,
We do.
and this item's going to probably take more than 10 minutes.
Oh, we were doing so good.
I know, I'm sorry. I mean, we can get started, but I know there's public comment and so,
Well,
Commissioner, regarding the 10 o'clock public hearing, it can't be heard any sooner than 10,
okay,
and it could be heard anytime after 10.
thank you.
okay. So we can get started here.
Yep.
And if that's, and most of this is going to be the Lisa show.
Okay.
So again, Gary Stockoff, Public Works, and I'll just kind of give a brief overview of this in that heretofore, we have had two committees, the STAC committee, which statewide transportation funding related, and then we had the STIF STI committee, which was formulated after House Bill 2017 and the transit funding that came out of that. Last biennium, the legislature decided to combine those two committees into one, which will now be the new STIF committee going forward. And as part of that, they had a rulemaking process, which Lisa was actually part of the committee that was on the rulemaking process for the new bylaws. And so the bylaws that you see before you today came directly from the work that that committee did. And to move forward, we need to adopt the bylaws so that we can form the new committee and be ready for the various projects that we know are coming up here with the new biennium next year. The process for reviewing those projects will start in September. And we're pretty excited because, you know, there's a lot of great projects. We just actually did 3 of the ones that were from last year that we amended, but we have obviously lots of projects that we have coming up. And the committee is very critical to being able to review those and move things forward. So I will defer to Lisa and she'll walk through how we got to where we're at in the process. And then we'll be ready to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, commissioners. So Gary did an excellent job teeing up the situation, and the bylaws that staff drafted and took to the combined staff, STAC and STIF committees in May very directly represent the Oregon administrative rules that were developed for basically governance of this and use of this money that is now going to be combined. In putting them together, we, and I believe it's in your packet, we adhered very closely to particularly the membership guidelines. The rulemaking committee spent a lot of time and had representatives of quite a few of the membership categories that you see in Article 6 in the packet in the draft bylaws. And so that committee spent a lot of time discussing the various membership categories and arriving at these. And so in putting the bylaws together, we were just very careful to adhere closely to these membership categories. So for example, you'll see there are 4 mandatory seats that have to be seated. And those include a low-income person. Let me get to I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong. the wrong attachment. Even the wording of this came very directly from the OARs.
In the packet, it's attachment. I think you're referring to attachment B, page 110, for those of you following at home.
Yeah, I apologize that I did print the packet this morning. Mine says attachment A, but I don't know. It is the draft bylaws. They say draft right across them. And Article 6 is on membership. And so the 4 mandatory members who have to be separate seats. In the past, it was very typical for special transportation populations to be represented thusly: seniors and people with disabilities. Well, the committee felt, the state committee felt strongly they should be individually represented. So the mandatory seats are a low-income person, a person 65 years or older, a person with a disability, and a representative of a public transportation service provider or a nonprofit entity which provides public transportation. So those are mandatory seats, and then the remaining members can come from one of 18 different categories. And you'll see, if you look at those categories, it just represents a lot of different potential stakeholders. And the state obviously felt like it was important to try to get a variety of voices on this committee. You will also see, and we had some questions in the committee, in the joint stack and stiff committee that we had. So I just wanted to make it clear, all the mandatory seats will show up again in the list of 18. So it's not, you can't, it is possible to have more than one, for example, a representative of a public transportation service provider or a person with a disability. But the first list is mandatory. The second is a menu of options. And that was really kind of the bulk of the discussion at the joint committee that we had in May. I thought we got some good questions. The minutes are also in your packet, so you could sort of see the nature of that conversation. And they did elect to forward these to you as drafted by staff. We did have a suggested kind of revised set of bylaws that came from a member of the public representing the National Federation of the Blind. And those folks, that's attachment D in your packet. And so it shows in red line some of those suggestions. And I would be happy to entertain any questions.
Commissioners, before you ask any questions, just want to clarify for the commissioners, we just passed out that attachment D to you that Lisa Scherf mentioned. That particular attachment actually came in over the weekend via email, and our staff saw that this morning and went ahead and printed it out and passed it out to everyone in the room, as well as emailed the copy to Commissioner Ojero.
Are you referring to the National Federation for the Blind red line? That was in the packet. Yeah, thank you.
Apparently, this is a revised version. I haven't been able to tell how it's revised, but others
I
probably
can't
will.
speak to that.
Okay, so you're waiting for questions from us?
Yes. It's been a while since I did this. I don't know if there's going to be a point at which the folks who drafted and are presenting this are going to be addressing the group or not, but if you have questions on either the set that staff drafted or the set that was suggested by the community group, I would be happy to answer them.
Okay. I can understand the concerns of the community group, the National Federation for the Blind, and others have in terms of wanting to ensure that the members of this group really represent the breadth of ridership here in the community. And that they are not only members of population over 65, having low income and disability or some form of disability, but that they also be riders who fit those characteristics. So it's a challenge. However, I also know from our position sitting on the Board of Commissioners with the role of appointing members to all of our advisory boards and committees, that it is very, very challenging to find people to take these advisory roles. And that frequently, the more narrowly we construct the roles, the less likely it is that we will have sufficient members to actually do the work. So it's a real balancing act, and we have to have some faith in the intentions of our programs that we are actually intending to serve the population described in the statewide legislation, and to provide a balanced approach. So I looked carefully at the red line version that we received from the constituency group, and while I understand their discomfort, I think I am comfortable with the staff draft because that provides the ability to continue to function and to receive the funds and to make the most of these funds to improve our systems on behalf of all with disabilities and who are heavily reliant on the system. But I would encourage us to appoint people who actually use the system.
All right. Appreciate those comments. I had similar thoughts. So we've got in the packet, attachment D is the staff bylaws. And then what I'm getting is attachment A is the community group suggestions.
I think it's the other way around. Attachment A is the staff draft, and attachment D 8.3 is, well, there are two 8.3s in my packet. 8.4 is the red line.
Okay, I've got D written in, but we are talking about the same thing here. So because D has no red lines and has the
Commissioners, I would suggest that you just make a motion adopting the bylaws that staff has presented to you.
Do we have people from the public that wish to speak to this before we make that motion?
I think the members of the public that were hoping to be here today, I know two of them were flying to a conference today, and then another one representing the Disability Equity Center. Talked to her on Friday, and she, I think, intended to be here. I don't know if it's because we're ahead of schedule or what. I will check in. But I know that this group has been really passionate about making sure there's representation of different disability communities in this board, and it might be a good idea to find some type of in between that's meeting the need, such as having 6 members of the board, but having a more flexible designation of those or other things. Let you all decide what's best for that, but it is really critical that we make sure we are engaging with National Federation of Blind, ARC of Benton County, Disability Equity Center, and other groups as well as we are doing this work because they're the ones who are really impacted by it. And they've been feeling continuously left out through work with local government. So we really need to be considerate of that and ensure that we are being careful as we make our decisions around this.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Johan, one of the things you're suggesting is that potentially instead of having a 5-member minimum, we have a 6-member minimum, and in terms of the mandatory seats have require 2 people with disabilities with different disabilities included in that group.
Yes. Kind of like a middle ground in that, because I heard what you're saying and hear what you're saying around like trying to find a specific one with a certain disability can be challenging. And we already know that that's something challenging for the rest of our advisory boards, for any other just general seat. But I think having some intentionality around that will hopefully meet the needs and the goals that our groups were submitting, as well as hearing the practicality of getting those groups involved. It's complicated for sure. So I think that's a good maybe middle ground to look for.
Would that be extremely challenging for staff?
Lisa?
I've given this a lot of thought, you know, because we've had these draft suggested changes for about a month or a little more. And one thing to keep in mind is that when the STIF money was made available by the Oregon legislature in 2017, statewide transportation improvement fund money, it was heavily focused on low-income individuals and continues in statute and OAR to have a strong focus on low-income individuals. And so I would just remind you of that as you're looking at how many types of seats and which ones are mandatory and who's represented, that the focus was and continues to be on low-income individuals. The second thing, and I understand and appreciate the sentiment that, you know, people are unique, people with disabilities are unique. I don't know how, I feel uncomfortable, and I know Joe Hahn would be assisting in this perhaps, but trying to determine what is a different type of disability. Intellectual disability, physical disability, mobility impaired, what constitutes a different disability? So that I just don't know what that looks like if we codify the requirement to have representatives of different types of disabilities. I don't really know what that means. Makes me a little uncomfortable, honestly.
Well, and as Commissioner Ojero pointed out earlier, we have other committees that, and when it gets into specific qualifications and makes it difficult to fill some of those slots, that it's narrowly targeted, and sometimes where we are not successful in filling those. I think of, is it SWAC or one of those committees where we have specific qualifications and a fair amount of vacant positions. So I think if I'm reading this small print correctly, no less than 5, no more than 9 members is the current proposal. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay. It seems like that gives us pretty good flexibility for adding positions, but making sure that we have at least a minimum number. And what's the timetable on when do we need to have this in place so that we can continue with the funding?
We don't have a specific schedule from ODOT yet, but going from what the process was 2 years ago, I think we need to get started in September because we've never done this particular thing before, which is to handle these 2 streams of funding at the same time. So I'd really like to have the group, Gary's coming in.
Yeah, I think Commissioner too, also in my time here, the committee size has usually been towards the upper end of that limit, just to make sure we have a broad scope of individuals in the community to be part of that. So the idea is if hoping to get the bylaws approved today, we would immediately turn around and start working with the board office to recruit for the committee and fill the seats. We've had interest from several of the existing STIF committee members to continue on in service. We know we also have a couple others through the National Federation of Blind and the discussions we've had so far that are interested in that as well. So the idea is that we would really like to have the committee formed, and I'll say seated, by early September, because we'll probably have monthly meetings from there through the first of the year to start talking about the projects. Once we know what the budget is, we assume it'll be as much as we had last time and hopefully more, and start identifying those projects with all the other qualified entities and the groups that are within Benton County so that we can get those programmed in. And the goal is to have, I think, that list to the board in February-ish.
Yes, that's what we did last 2
Yeah,
years.
so that's ready then for the kickoff for the next biennium, which is July 1 of 23.
Okay, I appreciate that timetable. So any further questions for staff?
Not a
No
question.
further-
Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Ojero.
No further questions, just a comment, in terms of disabilities. Blindness is pretty different from a serious intellectual and developmental disability in terms of how it affects a writer. And so I completely understand the disability community wanting to have more than one seat and not wanting to feel tokenized. And with respect to the state's perspective on and focus on low income writers of our systems, I would argue that a large proportion of those folks with disabilities qualify as low income also because of the challenges they have in day-to-day living and earning a living. So I don't see that as mutually exclusive. I just want to, I'm comfortable with the staff draft, but I want to very strongly say that I believe that we should and do our very best to include individuals that have a variety of different disabilities and challenges that use our system, because they're the folks that rely on it the most.
Thank you, Commissioner. My point was going to be a similar thing about 4.8 million people in the US who are on Social Security disability. Their average income is about $9,000. So many of us in the current community have that rate as well. I don't know specific numbers off the top of my head, but that's something to also consider is anyone who has that Social Security benefit are really not getting a lot of money. So they're also low income. So if we're going to get that overlap, if we're getting representation from disabled community members, then they're likely going to also be low income.
Commissioners, I just wanted to clarify that in your packet, if you're deciding to go with what staff proposed, that is attachment A as an apple.
I'd be happy to make a motion at this point.
Go ahead.
I move to adopt the staff draft of the Statewide Transportation Improvement Plan Advisory Committee bylaws as forwarded to us by the Joint Stack meeting. But want to also include emphasis on including a variety of disabilities among those represented on that advisory committee.
Great, and I will second that. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Well, thank you for in-depth discussion of the changes coming down the road, so to speak. I think we can go right into the public hearing. Do we need to break or just roll right into the hearing?
Commissioner, it's whatever your preference is. We can either take a break or we can jump right in.
I think I would want to keep going here.
Okay, let's roll.
Okay.
Commissioner, the public hearing involves Rick Krager. I think he's your staff person that's ready to speak to this.
All right. And there he is. Would you Rick, would you give us a background on the public hearing on the CDBG housing application?
Yeah, thank you again, commissioners. Thank you for having me this morning. Again, another first for me here today. So this is a process as it relates to requirement for our community development block grant, in which we are going to be requesting, or I should say, submitting an application for $600,000 for a housing assistance grant. This actually goes back to December, you might recall, when we were doing our budget supplement, and we had talked to you about building in the intention to apply for a housing assistance grant. Obviously, that was a little bit delayed. We had some challenges in terms of identifying the appropriate partner, but we are now at that point of being able to move forward. As part of that process, again, CDBG has required notice of a public hearing. And we have listed that notice in as of June 24th in the newspaper, presenting this committee, this hearing, I should say. So with me today is Rachel Maddock Hughes. I believe Rachel is here, and she is going to read the public notice, and then we will have Amanda, who will in turn read the notice in Spanish. So with that, I will turn it to Rachel.
Thank you very much, Rick. And hello, good morning, Commissioner Ogerow and Commissioner Malone and everyone else on the call today. Just a quick bit of background about this opportunity. So this comes from emergency COVID funding through Business Oregon. The county can apply for up to $600,000. You guys have identified Dev Northwest as the partner, the implementation partner to work with on this. We were actually going to be applying for a little bit under the $600,000 at $485,000 to make sure that we could disperse the funds in the 12-month period of the grant. This grant supports households to stay in their homes. So it is kind of trying to stop homelessness at the other end of things. And what it's going to do is going to help with back rent, mortgage, and utilities for up to 150 households in Benton County. Any questions about the focus of, and these are low to moderate income households. Any questions about the focus of the grant? Okay. With that, I'm going to read the very bureaucratic public meeting notice. You will note that I am making reference to grant funds from 2021. That is correct. These funds were allocated in 2021, so that's why there's that reference there. So, public notice and notice of public hearing. Benton County is eligible to apply for a 2021 Community Development Block Grant from Business Oregon. Community Development Block Grant funds come from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The grants can be used for public facilities and housing improvements, primarily for persons with low and moderate incomes. The state expects to receive approximately $13 million in new federal funds during 2021 for grants to non-entitlement cities and counties for eligible projects. The maximum grant that a city or county can receive under the COVID-19 Impact Assistance Program for housing-related activities is $600,000, with an additional $100,000 available if collaborating with an additional county, for a maximum of $800,000. Benton County is preparing an application for a 2021 Community Development Block Grant from Business Oregon for rental, mortgage, and utility assistance for residents of Benton County. It is estimated that the project will benefit up to 150 households. A public hearing will be held by the Benton County Board of Commissioners at 10 a.m. on July 5th, 2022 at 4500 Southwest Research Way, Corvallis, Oregon, 97333. The purpose of this hearing is for the Board of Commissioners to obtain citizen views and to respond to questions and comments about community development and housing needs, especially the needs of low and moderate income persons, as well as other needs in the community that might be assisted with a Community Development Block Grant project and the proposed project. Written comments are also welcome and must be received by July 1, 2022 at 4500 Southwest Research Way, Corvallis, Oregon, 97333. Both oral and written comments will be considered by the Board of Commissioners in deciding whether to apply. The location of the hearing is accessible to persons with disabilities. Please contact Maura Kowski at 541-766-3531 if you will need any special accommodations to attend or participate in the meeting. For more information about Oregon Community Development Block Grants, the proposed project, and records about Benton County's past use of Community Development Block Grant funds is available for public view at 4500 Southwest Research Way, Corvallis, Oregon 97333 during regular office hours. Advance notice is requested. If special accommodations are needed, please notify Rick Krager, Chief Financial Officer, at 541-766-6246 so that appropriate assistance can be provided. Permanent involuntary displacement of persons or businesses is not anticipated as a result from this proposed project. If displacement becomes necessary, alternatives will be examined to minimize the displacement and provide required or reasonable benefits to those displaced. Any low and moderate income housing that is demolished or converted to another use will be replaced. And that's the English, and now we need to pass it over to the Spanish reading.
Piece. I'll be reading the Spanish version of this. Aviso público y aviso de audiencia pública. El condado Benton es elegible para solicitar una beca de bloque para el desarrollo comunitario 2021 de Business Oregon. Los fondos de becas de bloque para el desarrollo comunitario provienen del Departamento de Vivienda y Desarrollo Urbano de Estados Unidos. Las becas se pueden utilizar para instalaciones públicas y mejoras de vivienda, principalmente para personas con ingresos bajos y moderados. El Estado espera recibir aproximadamente $13 millones en nuevos fondos federales durante 2021 para becas a ciudades y condados sin derechos para proyectos elegibles. La beca máxima que una ciudad o condado puede recibir bajo el programa de asistencia de impacto COVID-19 para actividades relacionadas con la vivienda es de 600 millones con 100 millones adicionales disponibles si colabora con el condado adicional por un máximo de $800,000. El condado Benton está preparando una solicitud para una beca de bloque para el desarrollo comunitario 2021 de Business Oregon para asistencia del alquiler, hipoteca y servicios públicos para los residentes del condado Benton. Se estima que el proyecto propuesto beneficiará hasta 150 hogares. La Junta de Comisionados del condado Benton llevará a cabo una audiencia pública a las 10 de la mañana, el 5 de julio en 2022, en 4500 Southwest Research Way, Corvallis, Oregon 97333. El propósito de esta audiencia es que la Junta de Comisionados obtenga las opiniones de los ciudadanos y responda a preguntas y comentarios sobre desarrollo comunitario y necesidades de vivienda, especialmente las necesidades de personas de ingresos bajos y moderados, así como otras necesidades en la comunidad que podrían ser asistidas con un proyecto de becas de bloque para el desarrollo comunitario y el proyecto propuesto. Los comentarios escritos también son bienvenidos y deben recibirse antes del 1 de julio en 2022 en 4500 Southwest Research Way, Corvallis, Oregon 97333. La Junta de Comisionados considera los comentarios orales y escritos para decidir si aplican. El lugar de la audiencia es accesible para personas con capacidades especiales. Póngase en contacto con Mark Kwiatkowski al 541-766-3531 si necesita adaptaciones especiales para asistir o participar en la reunión. Más información sobre las becas de bloque para el desarrollo comunitario del Oregon, el proyecto propuesto, y los registros sobre el uso anterior de los fondos de las becas de bloque para el desarrollo comunitario del condado Benton están disponibles para revisión pública en 4500 Southwest Research Way, Corvallis, Oregon 97333 durante el horario de oficina habitual. Se requiere aviso previo. Si se necesitan adaptaciones especiales, notifique a Rick Krager, director financiero al 541-766-6246 para que se pueda brindar la asistencia adecuada. No se prevé el desplazamiento involuntario permanente de personas o empresas como resultado del proyecto propuesto. Si el desplazamiento se vuelve necesario, se examinarán alternativas para minimizar el desplazamiento y brindar los beneficios requeridos razonables a los desplazados. Cualquier vivienda de ingresos bajos y moderados que sea demolida o convertida para otro uso será reemplazada. And that's it.
Thank you. All right, any, Zan?
I do have one clarifying question, given that this is a grant to the non-entitlement entities. I'm assuming that we've overcome the barrier of having to spend all of these funds only outside of Corvallis.
Correct. So as of November of last year, that no longer applies to the COVID-19 funds. So it is both entitlement and non-entitlement areas.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm very much in support of continuing with this proposal.
And I just might add one real quick thing to Rachel's introduction. Commissioners, you might recall, we also approved a $150,000 ARPA grant that was to Dev Northwest, and that particular resource will be a match or a complement, I should say, to this particular program. So that I can assure you is currently in place. So once we have this, this final approval, we'll be able to roll the entire program out.
And that particular grant, was that anticipated to be a kind of a jump start of this program so that we would not have this big gap between the funding that came through Community Services Consortium and then this Dev Northwest money?
That was the idea, obviously, was to look at, you know, the overall need and be able to put both resources. But yes, we're able to move a lot quicker as it relates to the ARPA dollar. And there's some more flexibilities, as you know, that are afforded that, although we are keeping the program intact under this so that it's not two different programs.
And I would add to that too, they're going to have the same intake procedure for both of these sets of funds, but depending on the level of household income, they will be put into one pot or another, because the CDBG grant has very specific and slightly lower requirements than the ARPA funding does.
Okay, I guess my question would be, these are obviously one-time dollars. Is there any thought to what happens after these dollars are gone, and we have a chance to evaluate the effectiveness of the program?
I think that's a really good question. I mean, the intent of this project is, so it is focused on COVID, the impacts of COVID, and it's focused on trying to keep people in their homes. And so this is a one-time, it looks at back rent and back more utilities and mortgage. It doesn't go forward. So it's the idea is just to keep people in their homes right now. Beyond that one-time help, I think it's part of your whole environment of addressing houselessness and keeping people in homes. And Dev Northwest has also done a lot of rental utility assistance and whatnot. So.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Excuse me, Commissioner Malone, I think you need to ask if anybody wishes to provide public testimony.
Okay, thank you. That's why you're here, Vance. At this time, are there any members of the public who wish to testify? Hearing none, do I close the public hearing? Is that the?
You need to ask for a motion to move this grant application forward for the records for CDBG.
Okay. I think we're ready for a motion.
Okay, I move to approve the application for Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, in the amount of up to $600,000 to be used to support the mortgage, rental, and utility assistance for low and moderate income households.
I will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you very much, commissioners.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. And I will now close the public hearing. And the only thing left on our agenda is other. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
Commissioners, I would like Corey Grogan to come up and introduce himself briefly. Corey is our new Public Information Officer and has arrived as of last week. So Corey, if you'd like to just do a brief introduction to the commissioners, that'd be great.
Sure. Again, my name is Corey Grogan. I'm happy to be here. I'll keep it brief. Really excited to be working in Corvallis. I went to Oregon State University, grew up on a Christmas tree farm in Silverton. So I really have a passion for the beavers in Corvallis and have a background in education, also military public affairs and public information. I've been in the Oregon National Guard now, doing public affairs for about 15 years and a number of deployments. And I've worked in emergency management, public information for the state. Needless to say, I've learned a lot. It's been very challenging, especially since the pandemic, but whether it's winter storms, flooding, mass shootings, it's just been, a lot of different things that we've responded to with emergency management, public information. Happy to be here supporting and serving the county and looking forward to working with you all and getting to know you a little better. So I understand there's going to be a learning process, but that's part of the fun, is getting to know about the county and what you all do and sharing that information with the public and getting the right information to the right people at the right time so they can make the right decisions.
Well, great. Great to have you on board. And I think this meeting gives you some idea of the breadth of issues that we deal with on a regular basis. And we need, take the health department report and getting that information out to the community is critical. So I'm glad you're here, Corey.
Yes, sir. I look forward to the challenge. Thank you.
All right.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Is there any other, what are you smiling about, Vance? If not, I will close our board meeting, and I don't think this will take very long. Are you okay to, Zan, to move into our service district agenda?
I really need to request just a 5-minute break.
Okay.
So I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
Pat, I cannot hear you if you're speaking.
Thought I was rambling or something, I don't know. So we're back. And so we're ready to open up the Alpine County Service District Governing Board meeting for July. It's the wrong date. 5th.
Good catch.
Commissioner, this is kind of an annual process we go through to certify the delinquent list for the various utility districts that we have. This happens to be for Alpine. And you'll see there are two customers on there that are behind. And so we would ask that you approve the resolution that's attached to advance us on in the process to try to collect those.
Okay. Any questions for Gary?
No, I see that this is in the consent calendar, so I'd be happy to move the consent calendar.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. All right. I will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Well, I will close the Alpine County Service District Governing Board meeting and open up the LC County Service District Governing Board. Any comments from the public? If not, I will. Unless there are any questions for Gary, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any other business? If not, I will close the meeting for the LC County Service District Governing Board and open the South Third County Service District Governing Board for Tuesday, July 5th. Any comments from the public? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
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 I do
Consent
have
calendar.
one question.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Pat. I was wondering whether we see patterns year over year with the same customers delinquent year over year.
Commissioner, I don't know. I will get with Debbie and a couple others. I'll get back with you on that. I don't know for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I will close the South Third County Service District Governing Board meeting. And I think that takes care of our business for today. And Vance is nodding his head, so we must be in good shape. Thank you all, and See you next Tuesday, if not before.
Thank you all.
Recording stopped.
Bye-bye.